For over half a century, California operated under a very specific and quite lucrative social contract. The state would foster world-changing innovation, tax the resulting astronomical wealth, and then redistribute those billions across its sprawling economy. It was a model that seemed bulletproof, until the final weeks of 2025. In those closing days, a series of quiet corporate filings began to surface, revealing a tectonic shift in the landscape of American wealth. Some of Silicon Valley's most iconic founders weren't just moving, they were systematically restructuring their entire empires to shield billions from the reach of the state. This isn't just a story about tax avoidance. This is a masterclass in legal maneuvers, a case study in the unintended consequences of aggressive legislation, and a warning sign for the future of the Golden State. I'm Andrew K. Wallace, and today we are looking at the legal architecture of the world great exit, and why the 2026 wealth tax might have just backfired before it even began. The trigger, the January 1st deadline. To understand the urgency of this story, we have to look at the legislative clock. Throughout late 2025, California lawmakers were debating a radical new proposal, a retroactive wealth tax. The target? Billionaires. The rate? A staggering 5% annually on their total net worth. The law was set to take effect on January 1st, 2026. This created a hard, high-stakes deadline. In the eyes of the law, your physical and legal residency on that specific date would determine whether you owed the state a few $1 million or several billion. Between December 23rd and December 29th, a pattern began to emerge in the public records. Larry Page, the co-founder of Google and one of the wealthiest humans to ever walk the earth, initiated a coordinated restructuring of his vast fortune. These weren't minor adjustments or year-end bookkeeping. This was a surgical, multi-state legal evacuation, the architecture of an exit. The documents filed with the California Secretary of State and the Delaware Division of Corporations tell a fascinating story. One by one, the entities that control Page's assets began to pivot. Coop LLC, which serves as Page's primary family office, the nerve center of his wealth, filed for conversion into a Delaware entity. One Arrow, a company tied to his ambitious flying vehicle projects, updated its principal address to Florida. Another venture, Dynatomics, an AI-driven aircraft startup, registered a new home in Keller, Texas. If you look at these filings in isolation, they look like routine paperwork. But when you map them out, you see a deliberate pattern of jurisdictional flight. Page wasn't closing his labs or firing his engineers in Mountain View. He was moving the legal identity of his wealth. Why does this matter? Because California's tax authority is tethered to residency and registration. Once the legal structure of a company moves to another state, California's reach becomes significantly shorter, and the destinations chosen were not accidental. Florida, Nevada, and Texas have no state personal income tax. Delaware, while not a tax haven in the traditional sense, offers a privacy shield and a business-friendly legal framework that makes ownership structures nearly opaque to outsiders. The Google duo, coordination or coincidence? The restructuring wasn't limited to Larry Page. His longtime partner and Google co-founder, Sergey Brin, was moving through a nearly identical process at the exact same time. Public records show that Brin relocated or terminated several limited liability companies, shifting them to Nevada. T-Rex Holdings, an entity co-owned by the duo, registered a new address in Reno, officially abandoning its longtime base in Palo Alto. When two of the most successful founders in history simultaneously decide to reposition their assets just days before a wealth tax deadline, it's no longer a coincidence. It's a strategy. At least 7 major entities were converted out of California during that one-week window. Insiders suggest the true number is likely much higher, distributed across a complex web of operating companies, research labs, and real estate holdings. Delaware, the protected harbor. We need to talk about Delaware's role here. For decades, it has been the preferred jurisdiction for American corporations, but not because of the weather or the culture. It's because Delaware has built a specialized court system, the Court of Chancery, that deals exclusively with corporate law. More importantly, Delaware provides a level of privacy that California simply doesn't allow. In Delaware, ownership networks can remain hidden. For a billionaire trying to navigate a residency dispute with a hostile tax authority, Delaware functions as a jurisdictional firewall. While Delaware hides the assets, states like Florida and Texas provide the tax relief. It's a two-step move. Delaware for privacy, Florida for the 0% tax rate. Personnel can still sit in an office in the Bay Area, but on paper, where it counts for the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board, the value of that work settles in a different state entirely. The myth of stationary wealth. This dynamic exposes a fundamental flaw in how policymakers think. Politicians often view wealth as something stationary, something anchored by factories, office buildings, and geography. But in the 21st century, wealth is highly mobile. It's digital. It lives in legal entities and trust structures. It moves at the speed of a digital signature. The proposed 5% wealth tax was never going to be a modest adjustment for people like Page or Brin. With Page's net worth estimated between $270 and $280 billion, a 5% annual tax represents an obligation of $13.5 billion every single year. When you are facing a $13 billion annual bill, your decision-making changes instantly. The reconstruction of Larry Page's legal architecture was designed to withstand the highest levels of scrutiny. You see, residency disputes aren't won by just moving a suitcase. They are won by demonstrating a pattern of life. Where is your home? Where are your businesses registered? Where do you sign your legal documents? The Miami anchor, the final week of 2025, wasn't just about paperwork. It was about physical anchors. On December 29th, Larry Page finalized the purchase of the Banyan Ridge Estate in Miami's Coconut Grove for $71.5 million. This is a massive property, 13 bedrooms, nearly 12,000 square feet on 4.5 acres of prime waterfront. Less than a week later, he bought another mansion on Biscayne Bay for $71.9 million. That's over $173 million in Miami real estate in a matter of days. In the world of high-stakes tax law, this isn't a luxury purchase, it's an insurance policy. Under California law, establishing a permanent residence in another state and transferring personal ties is the strongest evidence you can provide to change your domicile. By closing these deals before January 1st, Page built a foundation to contest any claim that he remained a California resident. The math is undeniable. If he stayed in California, selling just $1 billion of Alphabet stock would trigger $133 million in state taxes. In Florida, that bill is zero. Spending $173 million on houses to save $13 billion in taxes is one of the most logical financial moves ever made. A pattern of departure. Larry Page is the biggest name, but he is far from the first. He is simply the latest in a long line of exodus leaders. Elon Musk sent the first major shockwave in 2020 when he moved Tesla's headquarters to Austin and shifted SpaceX operations to Texas. Estimates suggest that move alone saved Musk $18 billion in capital gains taxes. Larry Ellison moved Oracle to Austin and established his residency in Hawaii. Peter Thiel and Keith Rabois, two of the most influential venture capitalists, declared Florida their home in 2020. Joe Lonsdale moved Palantir's operations to Texas. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a migration of the innovation economy, and when the leaders move, the capital follows. The structural vulnerability of the Golden State. California is more vulnerable to these departures than almost any other state because of its tax design. The top 1% of earners in California contribute between 40% and 50% of all personal income tax collected. And that income tax accounts for roughly 2/3 of the state's general fund. In 2021 alone, California saw a net loss of $29 billion in taxable income to other states. $5.6 billion went to Texas, $4.4 billion to Nevada, and $3.5 billion to Florida. These aren't just numbers. These are the funds that were supposed to pay for the very programs the wealth tax was intended to expand. The policy trap. Professional tax advisors have turned relocation into a high-end industry. Experts like David LaPrince have quietly facilitated moves for dozens of billionaires before the 2026 deadline. He estimates that if the wealth tax becomes law, another 20 billionaires could follow Page and Brin out the door. This creates what economists call a policy trap. Legislators see a budget gap, so they raise taxes on the wealthy. But the wealthy are the most mobile people on the planet. They leave, the tax base shrinks, and the budget gap gets even wider. The response? Raise taxes again on those who stayed. It's a self-reinforcing cycle of decline. Research from 2024 showed that previous tax increases in California actually eliminated nearly half of the projected new revenue because high earners simply left. You can't tax people who aren't there. The Florida blueprint. Florida isn't just winning because of the weather. It's winning because it has built a competitive product. The Florida Constitution literally prohibits a personal income tax. But they go further. They offer qualified target industry refunds, paying companies $3,000 to $6,000 for every new tech job they create. They offer a 10% credit on R&D expenses and a 5% credit on capital investments. In 2025, CNBC ranked Florida's economy as #1 for business in the country. That same year, Florida added over 10,000 technology jobs, double what California managed to add. The momentum is shifting. The crossroads. We are now at a visible crossroads. The legal identity of wealth is moving east. Even ventures that are physically tied to California, like Larry Page's electric air taxi collaboration with Boeing, can continue to do their R&D in the Bay Area while the revenue and the legal ownership are rooted in Florida. The stakes are enormous. Palm Beach County alone now counts 68 billionaires with a combined net worth of nearly $500 billion. Since 2014, the number of millionaires in that county has increased by over 110%. If California's wealth tax causes even a modest increase in this migration, projections show a potential $30 billion deficit by 2030. If 20 more billionaires leave, the 15-year loss to the state could reach $150 billion. Even the mayor of San Jose has warned that this path could undermine the very innovation economy that made California great. The events of December 2025 suggest the answer is no. Larry Page and Sergey Brin didn't just move, they built a jurisdictional firewall. They showed that when the price of staying becomes high enough, even the most iconic California success stories will find a new home. I'm Andrew K. Wallace, and I want to hear from you. Do you think a state-level wealth tax can ever work? Or is it an inevitable driver of migration? Does California need to rethink its social contract? Or is this just the price of doing business? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this deep dive into the legal architecture of wealth valuable, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We don't just report the news, we analyze the systems that drive it. The next corporate filing is likely already in progress. The next fortune is already looking for its landing point. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next analysis.